Well, forget about rescuing our economy. These days, is Ben Bernanke all about rescuing Barack Obama? Hard to say, but it certainly isn't hard to imagine another round of Fed intervention of the markets helps the markets and helps the president. And on that count, it hurts the guy trying to become president, the same guy who already has stated he wants Ben out. Market watcher Craig Smith says this could be a case of Ben returning the favor. So, Craig, Ben in a fit with Mitt, and he has the power to prove it, right?
Well, sure. And Neil, it's the only thing that makes sense, because another round of quantitative easing is not going to do any more than the first two rounds of quantitative easing.
By the way, Craig, you're an encyclopedia. Just to remind folks back on, when the Fed comes in the markets doing this easing stuff, it buys any notes, treasury paper it can find, scarfs it all up, tries to keep rates low. Markets do a jig. They love it generally, and they expect it again, right?
That's exactly right, Neil. And what happens is, even on Mr. Bernanke's own words, it forces investors looking for yield to go into the marketplace. So you'll see a nice little pop in the stock market. Most people don't realize that the stock market is not the economy, but they look at the stock market. If it's doing well, my 401k is doing well, Mr. Obama must be doing a great job. It's the only thing that makes sense now, Neil, because think about it. As you said, and Fox Business did a great job reporting on this, Mr. Romney is not going to have Mr. Bernanke serve another term. He'll probably go with somebody like John Taylor from Stanford or Glenn Hubbard. That being said, Mr. Bernanke has two reasons to do this. Number one, to get Mr. Obama reelected. Number two, to keep himself in a job. Because there's no way you can look, Neil, we don't have a liquidity issue. We have a confidence issue. There's plenty of money out there. There's $2.2 trillion on corporate balance sheets. At least $2 trillion, if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, sitting in the banks. What are we missing? We're missing confidence of the average American being willing to go take a mortgage out because he's not worrying about losing his job, or buying a new car because he can make the payments, or a businessman doing a capital expenditure in his business because Mr. Obama's not going to send us off the fiscal cliff. If we had that, Mr. Bernanke knows we don't need more stimulus. We need confidence.
And there have been more than a few Fed members who had doubts about the last round of intervention, because you could argue that the last thing we needed was more cash flooding the system. But you do then have to piece together this sort of sinister notion here that there is something else afoot, and that is to just goose a recovery that's dicey to help the guy in office.
Well, yeah, I believe that, Neil, and I don't think there's anything sinister about it, because it follows the pattern that Mr. Bernanke believes in. He truly believes in the Keynesian model of stimulating your way back to prosperity. If you create enough money, ultimately the money will gain velocity and it'll bring the recovery. There's a problem with that, though, Neil. All this pent-up demand, all these trillions sitting in balance sheets, what happens when all that money hits the market? We could have inflation just like we had in 79, 80. We could see interest rates have to go up to 15, 16% to battle a 15 or 16% inflation rate, and then we got a real mess on our hands.
But that'll be after November, Craigie. That's after November. But very well put. Thank you, sir.
Good seeing you, Neil.
Meanwhile, as a swing state slip about to hit Mitt hard.
So, I'm walking down the street, just, walking, and I found myself in the middle of this parade honouring America's troops, which is actually quite fitting, because Geico has been serving the military for over 75 years. Oh, no, look, I know this is about the troops and not